Good morning to Romania.
Yeah, and I hope that the internet connection is as good as you announced it. So,
we can hear you quite well.
I can hear you. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, we hear you, we see you. So how do you feel about this?
Thank you very much for the invitation.
How do you feel about the convention trajectory, and what do you expect from your perspective as a practitioner from the Third European Youth Work Convention? What are your expectations?
Well, my expectations would also go back to the previous editions because, somehow being involved with the Youth Triangle, I was part of the first event as a participant, so as a youth worker, then as a facilitator, and now also representing a bit the policy domain and research, and also as a rapporteur. So I'm looking forward to see familiar faces, at least in the online setting, and to continue what we started 10 years ago. We did speak a lot of what happened the previous years, and in 10 years I think that the youth workers' voice started being heard more and more at the European, national, and also at the local level. But definitely youth workers need a bit more support in terms of cross-sector cooperation, of having those spaces to come together, to reflect, to share their local realities, needs and interests of young people. We also feel the need for better recognition of the work we do, especially at the grassroots level. And also for that, we need to have the European, national and local institutions and authorities with us. What we also need, we need quality public services for young people, and we also need trustworthy partnerships between the public and the private sector. And of course, we need to react better and faster to the youth needs and interests. Why that? Because we started speaking about digital youth work, for example, for a couple of years, but the pandemic kicked in, so we had to work on that. It was enough with speaking, and we really had to move and work with young people where they are at the moment in the digital space. But of course, we are struggling a lot because there are so many young people who are not here in the digital space, and we also need to focus and to find new tools and instruments to reach to those young people who are not online with us. And I really hope that during these very challenging days, because we only have 4 days to work on that, we'll also find the time and space to reflect on the tools and instruments that would help us reach those young people who are left outside the digital participation sphere. We need to start working together with them and for them. And I strongly believe that the convention would allow us to reflect, to work, and to come with a declaration that would help us for the next 5 years, and of course with some priorities that would grow and evolve in the next 5 years. And definitely in 5 years, I really hope that we will be able to gather together 1,000 or even more representatives of the youth field, and to see what we did in these 5 past years.
So thank you very much, Adina, Marina, Serban. And now we want to talk to somebody in Finland. We will talk to Tomy Kilakowski. He's a senior researcher of the Finnish Youth Research Society. And there he is. Hi, Tomy Kilakowski. Oh, we don't hear you. Is your microphone on? We don't hear you.
That's like the Corona home office classic, right? Is your microphone unmuted? Is your camera on?
But I think it's unmuted, what we see up there.
Yeah.
But where's his microphone? I don't see one. Tomy, we are really sorry, we cannot hear you. Perhaps we can just, no, we can talk to...
Yeah.
Ah, hello, I think we hear you now.
Oh yeah, sorry for that. We tested the microphone, but you know that happens. 2020, full of surprises for all. Yeah.
So good to hear you now. You have looked at the convention path from your research perspective. What are your expectations?
Well, for me, it's about community. And the standard idea of thinking about community is that despite all of the differences, in a community, everyone is fundamentally similar. And if you don't work in a community, you are different despite all of the similarities shared. And for me, the story of youth work conventions is about building a sense of European youth work community and finding tools to make that community stronger. Looking at history, the first youth work convention was held in 2010. And during that time, there was a desire to build a more coherent European youth work community, which would at the same time respect different European realities and provide common tools for developing youth work and for advocating youth work and for sharing ideas. And like Kuhn said, the first convention was an important step because it decided to talk only about youth work. And I think the emphasis on diversity was needed to make sure that differences are understood and perhaps to secure that open-endedness and creativity of youth work can be maintained. Well, the second youth work convention was needed because it sought to find common ground, and the common ground was thought to be about creating spaces and building bridges. So youth work sort of had a dual mission. It's about providing young people opportunities and at the same time changing societies. And clearly these two conventions have played a part in the political processes which have made youth work community stronger. And I think now that they are starting a third convention, this is a peculiar time because now we live in an age where the future is not what future used to be. So for me, in this convention, there are youth workers, there are youth researchers, there are policymakers, there are youth work managers. And despite all of the differences, I think that they are similar. And during the process, we have learned to respect differences and developed understanding of what unites us. And the next step for me would be to secure that they can communicate the value of youth work in this peculiar area of uncertainties, migration and eco-crisis, and to help youth work to form professional alliances and to create structures that are needed to make youth work stronger, both in Europe and in the local and state level. So good luck to all of us in this convention.
Thank you, Tomy Kilakowski in Finland. And now we will look to Belgium, to Musti Önlen from De Ambassade. Musti, you are a practitioner with a special focus on inclusion and diversity. How do you feel about the convention trajectory and what do you expect from the third convention? Oh, same problem here, Musti. We don't hear you. I don't know what the problem is. Perhaps you can check if your microphone is on. He's checking, but we don't hear you yet.
I think we will all remember 2020 as the year with one question. Is your microphone unmuted? Are my speakers working? Is my internet connection strong enough?
Yeah.
I guess it's working
Yay!
now. Hello.
Okay, perfect. Hello.
Hello, good morning everybody. First of all, thanks for having me here. It's an honor to speak at the conference. I'm working on inclusion and diversity in the youth work in the region of Flanders here in Belgium. I'm a policy worker, and I think it's really important that if you look at the first two conventions, then we have talked a lot about diversity. I feel like also in whole Europe, but also on international level, let's look at America. There is a lot of happening due to racism, due to discrimination, decolonialization, and I still think that we have a long way to go. We take a lot of actions, we set up a lot of actions to work on discrimination and on racism, but it's a hard topic, and I think it has to do with also fault levels, let's say, what are being created in our sector, in our work, and it comes from, for example, from the media, from political institutions, from political parties, and they are dividing the people. So I think it's really important that if you look at the second conference, we talked a lot about we have to have the human rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We have to use that as our compass. And I think it's really important that we cannot be divided with, oh, you are a lefty or you are from the right wing. We have to look like what are the common general things that we need in our work that we do, but also in our society. And that's more solidarity, that's more respect towards each other, that's to get to know each other. And there's still a lot way to go, but for me, in my job in Flanders, we work on inclusion by getting the voices of the organizations to let them hear, but also the voices of vulnerable people. For example, people with a migration background or people with a handicap. All those things, we want to let the voices hear and work a bit bottom up, so we can get a change, and so that we can evolve to be an inclusion society.
Thank you very much, Musti, Önlen.
Thank you very much. And now, last but not least, we have Miriam, Toymah, Chief Executive Officer, Government Agency for Youth in Malta. Maybe first things first, from experience. Miriam, good morning. Your camera is working. Can you hear us? Can we hear you? Good morning to Malta first.
Okay, good morning. I can hear you.
Yeah, and we hear you, which is the best news at this point. Thank you very much. So, from your policy perspective, what do you expect from this third European Youth Work Convention after watching and listening to the convention trajectory?
Well, I had the privilege to be in the three of them. So, yeah, on reflection, it seems to me that while we have made some progress in some areas, we have not progressed much in others. And it is true that over the past 10 years, youth work has acquired a more cross-sectoral character and is now more actively engaged with related practices and sectors in the youth field. However, it is only now, 10 years later, that we have the opportunity of giving life to a European youth work agenda. Although we are in the midst of a pandemic and we have an advantage, we do have an advantage now in being in the right place and at the right time, as the agenda can be developed and implemented and supported in the context of the EU Youth Strategy, the Council of Europe's Youth Sector Strategy 2030, the Council of Europe Recommendation on Youth Work, and the EU resolution which sets the framework of this European Youth Work Agenda and which was adopted last week by the Council of Ministers. And of course, together with other related initiatives such as the United Nations Youth Strategy, Youth 2020. We have to remember Europe is not an island. Let us also think global. So here we are, online and not face to face. But thanks to you, we can still get together. We can get together as the community of practice, as we have been saying. And I hope that throughout these days, we will further learn how to do it better as we all interact. The characters of a community of practice are the domain, the community, and the practice. I didn't start talking about the past conventions because I wanted to bring this over to you this morning. The domain is what we really talked about in the first European Youth Work Convention. We tried to look at the diversity, we tried to see and explore what the domain is, and we looked at diversity as something which can be positive and something which can also be negative. But let us remember one thing. I mean, let us look at diversity as a two-dimensional thing. Diverse in setting, context and form, but more uniform in practice. The community, which is another characteristic of a community of practice, is what we tried to do in the second convention. The common ground, trying to get together as a community. And now my expectations for the third convention is the practice. The practice and that we're gonna try and talk about. A community of practice is not merely a community of interest. People who like certain kinds of chocolate, for example, that's what I like. But members of a community of practice are practitioners. They develop a shared repertoire of resources, experience, stories, tools, and ways of addressing recurring problems. So during these days, let us use this shared practice to initiate a process, which we are calling the Bonn process, even though we are not in Bonn, which we will use to further develop and propose implementation, strategies, measures, and priorities to shape the European Youth Work agenda. We have the political will, the political documents, so it is the time now for this community of practice to share experiences and lead a cultural change. And what is this cultural change? The cultural change to stop feeling as the underprivileged, the tribe striving to survive. That's what I had felt in the first convention. To stop acting like the superheroes, but let us ground our feet, share experiences to become more professional, more organized, learn how to prioritize rather than being everywhere and anywhere, and set an agenda to avoid duplication of work, manage resources better, and bring about a more coherent approach. And in giving life to the European Youth Work agenda, let us keep in mind that we need to take actions to develop competences, improve quality, and promote practices in youth work. The agenda is ours. Let us work together this week and get it going. Good luck to all of us.